in case we also have to stream this later, because if this doesn't work the way that I think it's going to work, we'll just stream it as a premiere for later. Amen.
Amen.
It's live because I just got an alert.
Okay.
I did too. I did too.
Yeah, I don't know what's live, so we'll see. So I'm going to do both just to make sure. So welcome, everybody. We're glad to be here, and we're glad to be in a new book in Serenity Book Club, and we're excited about what God is doing in this moment. So, hey, guys, so with this in mind, we started this new book by our one of our pastors, Stephen Thurston, and we're talking about mirror moments. I don't know if you all had a chance to get this book or not yet. We're going to start with the introduction in chapter 1. I think that even if you've not dealt with a relationship, you're dealing with people in relationships, and we're talking about something called emotional intelligence. So let's talk about that. When you all talk about emotional intelligence, what does that mean to any of you guys? Anybody can stop.
I never heard it said that way.
Yeah,
But emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
I mean, well, you very emotional for one in your relationships, So I'm thinking that's what it means. Just you're taking this relationship and you're dealing with your emotions. And what I have learned is that your emotions can go back from a very early age. So all the emotions you've already had, you're taking it and putting it into that one relationship.
Well, actually, emotional intelligence is actually a leadership process in which we deal with people. We deal with them intellectually, but we also deal with them emotionally. And how we're able to manage our feelings helps us to interact with people in one way or the other. If I have an emotional bias toward people, if maybe I don't like male whites, or I don't like male blacks, or I don't like male Asians, then I might respond in a specific way toward them. And emotional intelligence helps me to understand how I respond in a moment. And so it is an important part of how we deal with people. And oftentimes now in the world of corporate America, they're not only interested in what you can do from a leadership standpoint, they're not interested in just what you know, but how do you interact with people today?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah.
They
So
usually have you testing for emotional intelligence. A lot of them test you for that because of that.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
So there's a whole different animal out there that we have never considered before, because usually we think people, if they're qualified to do something, they can do it. It's just like the same thing that you found in the medical field. There were a lot of people who were intelligent enough to become doctors, but their bedside manner was horrid. And so emotional intelligence started being studied greatly so that we could figure out how people interact. And sometimes you don't want to put people in situations where they don't have a feeling of that. In his book on, in his book
it's
on,
more of you being aware of how you control your emotions,
absolutely,
how you react to situations.
absolutely, yes,
Yeah.
all of that is true. Yep. So what I wanted us to do is to turn to the front of the book, the introduction, and he starts talking about that on page, on the front introduction page. He says that emotional intelligence and self-awareness are key contributors to producing superior leaders and strong relationship builders. And so what we have to understand is that even though we have a ability to connect with people, do we have the emotional intelligence to be able to connect with others? And that's going to be a key for us today, is how do we do that? But he talks about that the goal of his book, and this is on page 8, is that the goal of the book is to provide you with an important tool that you will need to build healthy, sustainable, fulfilling relationships and it's a tool, is a mirror. In order to understand mirrors, we must first understand light. What were your thoughts about that when you first read that portion right there? Anybody, you all can just jump on in. Because I think that that was a significant statement.
I think in order to understand a relationship, you must understand yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You must understand who you are in order to filter out through who you are, in order to filter out how you coincide and coexist on building a relationship in others and networking with others.
Yeah, yeah.
You must know where your light come from in order to shine through others.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that that is absolutely true. It is the light that we are able to bring oftentimes in these sustainable relationships. If we don't have light, then anytime that you go into a darkened room, what do you normally experience if you're not familiar with the room?
You tend to bump into things because you don't know what things are.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And light brings about the ability for you to see around you and to sustain those relationships. So that's very good. He goes on says that the law of reflection states that there's a ray of light hits a surface and bounce back in a particular way. Light itself is invisible until it bounces off of something and scatters. This scattering is also known as a diffuse reflection, and how our eyes interpret what happens when light hits an uneven surface. However, mirrors don't scatter because they're smooth and surface. Light reflects without disturbing the incoming image. Thus, the image that we see in the mirror is a large print of ourselves rather than a reflection of others. And I think that that is really a deep concept when you think about it, is that oftentimes we project onto other people, but it's really us reflecting in our own mirror. Do you find in yourselves, and that's the question that we're going to start out with as we go through this book, is do you find that you always reflect exactly what you want to reflect to other people? Or do you struggle, like many other people, with trying to represent yourself appropriately?
Yeah, I find that I have trouble because what I want to reflect usually come out as not being who I really am because of my complexes inside. I try to have a better, how can you say it? I want to reflect confidence, and I'm hoping I am, but sometimes I feel as though I'm not.
Okay, okay, very good. Anyone else?
I'm confused about that, Miss Kira. What do you mean by that?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, what I mean by that is that um, I kind of think that I do have a lot of confidence, and I'm trying to put that confidence out there, and that's how I want people to know that I do have confidence. But somewhere along that inside of me, I also have this inferiority complex, and I be trying to hide that because it's almost like I don't want people to see that part of me. I want them to only see that confident, strong person.
Okay. Okay.
No,
I said
thank
I told you a little bit too much of myself.
Never.
Well, he goes on to say that each of the ensuing chapters will continue to serve as a smooth surface for us.
Yeah.
That we can spend that time gazing into this mirror, because unless we're able to see ourselves appropriately, honestly, think about it. We're not able to be a blessing or even a change for ourselves. You ever go out? I know I've done this before. I didn't go to the mirror first, and then I'm a little disheveled, or maybe I'm a little ashy, or what have you, because I didn't check everything that needed to happen. And so I don't represent what I really wanted to represent because I didn't take time to look in the mirror. And sometimes I think when we're talking about relationships and people that we're engaging with, we're not looking at them in a pure way. We're looking at people in a way where we can say, okay, I get where you're coming from. I hear what you're saying, but I'm not really connected to who you are because I really can't even see myself.
Ah,
I look ashy. I look disheveled.
Yeah.
I look messed up. I got crumbs all over my mouth, you
Yeah.
know?
yeah.
and so we've got to look into the mirror of who we are in order for us to do anything else. What are your thoughts about that? Anybody else have mirror moments other than myself?
Now I have that on these Zoom calls. I be thinking I'm looking a certain way, and then when I see myself on the Zoom, I'm like, oh my goodness. And yeah. So even with that, that's a mirror moment. And yeah. And I was gonna say, if I could go back to the other question, um, I'm like a chameleon. At least I was in my younger ages, where I would feel one way in on the inside, but people would portray me as something else. They saw me as a weak, victimized person, and that wasn't who I was. And I would wonder, Lord, what am I saying that people get this opinion of me? So that's all I want to say.
That's good. That's good. He says that as you consider the content within the context of your relational life, you will hopefully see a light print of yourself in an undisturbed image, recognizing that you're the common denominator in all your past, present, and future relationships. The moment of introspection and reflection of each chapter will provide you ultimately aid in changing what's within to change what's around you. And as you grow, the quality of your relationship will grow. And as you mature, so will the substance of your relationships as you become self aware and will notice a decline in the frequencies of problems within your relationships. And we're not just talking about relationships with husbands, wife, boyfriends or girlfriends, that kind of thing, just relationships in general. And then he says that it is his desire, the completion of the book, that you'll be challenged, changed, and charged, which that's his normal vernacular, but that we have a honest look at the man or the woman who is in the mirror. You remember that good old prophet Michael Jackson once said about the man in the mirror.
Yeah.
You know, we've got to have a reflective moment. And even the scripture tells us that, you know, in James, that if you come to that mirror and you get yourself and you look at it and you see yourself unshoveled and you don't do anything about it, it wasn't really even good for you to be in the mirror in the first place. And so I'm hoping that in this moment, we'll be in a mirror moment. So we're starting in chapter 1. Or as he has it in chapter 2, it says lessons learned from failed relationships. Before we get into that, let me ask you, has anybody ever had a failed relationship? And that could be with coworkers, that could
Mhm.
be with a relationship with a man and woman, it could be with a friendship that went south. It could be with a church member. It could be with someone in a group. Anybody had failed relationships? And if you have, can you talk briefly about just how it made you feel? Not the situation. We don't need to talk about the situation, but just how that failed relationship made you feel.
Failed relationship for me, it's kind of make me feel, depending on who the person is, unvalued, unappreciated, unloved. It just put you in a place where you really don't want to be.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for being honest. Anyone else?
Painful.
Painful. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I felt painful. I felt rejected, and I'm talking about I've been in all of those relationships, and being rejected is not a good feeling. And you doubt yourself.
Mhm.
I felt wounded. It took some time to get over, why would somebody hurt me? So I felt all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
I, I
Anyone
was
else?
I was gonna say rejected, hurt, misunderstood. And then it made me look within myself. Who am I? And why did they reject me? Why wasn't I good enough?
Mhm.
Yes, yes.
Ms. Vivian says that sometimes people think that I'm stuck up or mean, but they don't, but I don't have anything to say. I just don't want, she says, anything to say. I don't just talk to me to be talking. And so, yeah, that's an essence of it. And I think that sometimes we get to the point that we've been wounded in these failed relationships, either thinking that it had something to do with us, that we messed up, or it had to do with the way that we communicated. Do both just to make sure. Or some doubt that we had in and of ourselves. There's a lot of things that we experience in the moment that makes us upset and makes us disappointed in that moment. And so those are the things that we have to think about. Anyone else as we move on? All right, well, let's go. So it says here, and this is on where he says, as we reflect upon our past relationships, we have a tendency to view them in the perspective of failure. The truth is that we've entered in these relationships with certain expectations that weren't met. We had goals of the relationships that weren't reached. We even passed up opportunities to date others whom we felt connection and compatibility with, only to discover that we chose turned out to be more a liability than an asset. And I think that that's true, not only in dating relationships, but also relationships that we've dealt with people, opportunities that we've dealt with on jobs, all of those things. We had an expectation that this was going to be the best. You ever thought that you were just going to die because the person that you were in a relationship, it didn't work out? I'm just going to die. And then you realize you're still alive. Anybody ever felt that?
Oh
Yes.
yeah, I felt that.
Yes, yes. Thank God. Yeah, you're right.
It makes us feel almost worthless. And even with a job that we get on, we try, we made that perspective, we prayed about that job, we prayed about that man, we prayed about getting into that organization, we prayed about being a part of this, we prayed about being elected as, president of this thing or vice president of that thing, and then you get what you wanted, right? And then you're like, oh! Anybody ever experienced that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I experienced that too.
But he goes on and says that failure is all that you see is the flashbacks and past relationships invoke feelings of guilt, sorrow, embarrassment, and even uncertainty about future relationships. Have you ever felt like you didn't want to try again in a relationship, you know, whether or not it's with a guy or a girl, or whether or not it's with a developing another opportunity, going on another job interview, all of those things, because if I failed that, am I going to fail this? If I didn't do well here, am I going to do well there? And why? Anybody be willing to share?
Opening up for a new friend, all of that.
No, go ahead.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Veronica. Yep.
No, I was saying opening up for a new friend or any of that. It puts you into a space of, I don't want to say annoyed, but it puts you into you're careful. It's just like having a car accident. Once you have a car accident, you're the person on the road driving 10 miles an hour.
Yep.
On the highway. It's supposed to go 60 and you doing 10 miles an hour in the passing lane, because it makes you annoyed on everything. It makes you super careful because you're scared of putting yourself out there again. Absolutely.
The winter when it happens, and I remember hitting it's now about almost 7, 9, no, had to be almost 10 years ago. I hit an intersection in Indiana. I swung around like 6 times in this intersection in the middle of winter because it was black ice. And ever since then, and I'm not usually afraid of winter driving, but that just made me very cautious at the time. Made me very cautious. Yeah.
Reverend Yvette, you're not out there driving 10 miles an hour now.
I am not.
Okay.
No.
Because God's still working on me. You 10 miles an hour now. I'm be the one to go by you and bump the road.
No, honey.
I'm late for church.
But my spidey sense is much more alert when I come to those intersections. I'll tell you that for sure. But no, girl, no.
So Veronica gonna be out there looking for it.
I'm still.
You don't get off this highway, lady.
I'm still trying to obey the law. That's good. That's good. Yes. Anybody else before we move to page 13? Anyone?
Well, I've had I read different in different relationships. When I had a girlfriend who I had to part ways with because of distrust, it's hard for me to really trust another girlfriend. And it's kind of strange because I didn't feel that way about my male friends, you know. And so I have learned, I'm just careful, period. Even when it comes to jobs, I found out that if I get rejected, it takes me a while to get back on to apply for other jobs. So it just depends on what it is, and I guess who it is.
Good. Thank you.
And it's so crazy that Miss Carol said that, because I had a lady friend that she crossed me and we fell out, and I took her back. But when I prayed on it, I wasn't supposed to take it back. I was like, it's our season. And I took her back and she double hurt me. And that hurt was more hurt. I hurt more than when my father passed. But I hurt more than that than I ever did in a relationship. And I was like, what is wrong with that? Then an intimate relationship. And I was like, that's weird. But girlfriend hurt for some reason. Because it's more of an intimate than it is with a male. It's the worst hurt. It's worse hurt.
Absolutely.
Yes. I think because he let them in.
I just thought I was the only one that felt like that.
No.
What were you going to say, Miss Carolyn?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just agreeing with both of them, because I think we let girlfriends more deeply into our circle, even than sometimes our husband or boyfriend or whoever. We
always thought it was the complete opposite. I've never heard that from anybody. This is the first time I've ever heard that.
No, we all did it, honey.
Good book.
You live, you learn.
This is good.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say something. I have a different experience. I was divorced at 28, and I dated, and I kept attracting the wrong people, the same people, just in a different persona, if that's the right word. And I took myself off the market, so I don't date anymore because I'm afraid I'm gonna still attract that same person. And I was like, what's in me that's attracting this person? Is it stupid across my forehead or what?
That is why I'm glad we're reading this book, because this will help to answer some of those questions, whether or not we're dealing with relationships with our girlfriends and people who hurt us, church hurt that can sometimes hurt worse than any other hurt that you can experience, whether or not it's a disappointment on a job and people who hurt you there, just the hurt itself, and then in relationships, because he's specifically talking about relationships, but these are principles that we can pull in from everywhere. And Prella said that all of that, what you all have been saying, is so true. One of the things that people, he says on page 13, aren't possessions. He said, people aren't possessions. That's the first concept that we have to understand, is that people are not possessions. And so when we enter in relationships, we are fully committed, fully invested, determined to give our all, 110%. But because we invest so much of our time, our energy, our emotions, and let's not forget money, we easily shift into a mindset that that other person is a possession. And so that could be also true not only in relationships for males and females, but it can also be in relationships with people we go to church with, our best friends, those girlfriends, those, those folks that we hang out with, those people from church, even those jobs that we depend upon. They become almost possessions of us because we're giving 101%. We think like, I've given my all, so you should belong to me. You should be grateful for all the stuff that I have done for you. What are you doing to me that you don't have complete loyalty? And we even do that with our kids if we're not careful. We will do that with our kids. I've given you everything. Why don't I have your complete loyalty as a result of that? Because I've invested in you. But we have to realize that people are not possessions. They're not something that belong to us, that belong to God.
That is so. I really believe that is more of a problem than people care to really realize. I mean, race, especially parents, mothers, because of the fact that they feel so, okay, I raised you, so you owe me your life,
I think that that's all true. He says that we request of them, and we not request, but we demand of them to meet our hopes, our dreams, our expectations, all of these things. And then when we can't control these individuals, what happens? That we can't control the decisions that other people make. Have you ever felt like, whether or not it's your girlfriends, whether or not it's your children, whether or not it's that person that you were in relationship with, that you felt like you wanted, that you deserve to be able to control some of the things that happen? Now, you don't have to answer, you don't have to answer if you don't want to answer this, but this is something that is a very real concept with this idea that people are possessions. And so control or our need to control things can also contribute to the failure of these relationships. Will anyone want to share? And if not, we will move on, because I understand.
I do. My guy don't pay me no attention though.
You try to control him?
Yeah, he don't pay me no attention.
He's like, all right,
None.
all right. We're
None
gonna
at
go
all.
with that.
Yeah. Well, I can say people have always tried to control me, and I will not let them. So a lot of my relationship, and I'm talking about male, female, family members, when I sense that they're trying to control me, I just get away from them. My main thing is that this is my life, and I've learned how to let God lead me. And so when I was younger, I just said, well, this is my life. But when I learned better, that I know God is the one that can control me. But I refuse to let somebody else control me, because, you know, I'm not going to live my life based on what other people want for me. I got to live my life based on, now I know, for what God wants for me.
Well, you just helped us segue into the next section. He says,
Oh.
number 2, you can't change grown people.
You're right.
You can't change grown people. It says that many relationships have failed because love was absent. It was just assigned to the wrong person. The fact of the matter is that you were in love with the idea of them and not the reality of them. You spent more time playing Dr. Frankenstein, trying to make and mold your partner of whom you wanted them to be, rather than appreciating them for who they were. We possess the power to motivate, inspire, and influence people, but people only change because of an internal desire to change. And so when you said clearly, Carol, that you won't allow anybody to control you, also what you're saying is that I'm not going to compromise in the moment. I'm going to be who
Yes.
I'm going to be. And
Yes.
so, which is also a part of when he goes further in the book, that you've got to have some compromise too. But you can't change grown people. You know, grown people are who they are. And if they've been molded a certain way, that is exactly who they're going to be. So to have expectations of people that you are in relationship with, whether or not they're male and female, whether or not they are your friends or family members, what have you, you can't change grown people. Once they become grown people, they are who they are. They can't, those of you who are married, you all go into these relationships. Those of you who are dating, you go into these relationships with these grown people. They had a mama and a daddy at
Yep.
one point in time, whether or not they were raised by them or not. They had genetics and heredity. They had experiences, people that you develop relationship with as girlfriends. They have mama and a daddy. They have places that they have grown up to be. This is who they are, and who they are is who they are going to be.
Yep.
They're not going to change just because you magically want to wave a wand over them in order for them to be something different.
Yes.
Yes, that is so true, Reverend Yvette. Even with our grown children, I
Mhm.
raised them. I have 2 sons. I raised them in a certain way, but when they got grown, they went their own way. And no matter how much I fuss and nag, they're not going to change.
They're not going to
That's
change.
it.
Right, because they're grown people.
They grown. They got their own minds.
That's right. And so you have to resolve that in order for you to not feel in failed relationships. And then he says, enjoy all of life's pie. He talks about romantic slice of pie, and he talks about the emphasis of that. But he also says that there is a plethora of roads that can lead to peace. He says here, contentment and fulfillment in your life, friendships, passions, hobbies, deserve your time and attention too. Don't allow finding your one true love to be the all and end all of your existence. one of the things that oftentimes people find disappointment in their marital relationships or even their relationships with men and women is because they have stacked everything into that person. Even in our friendships, we've
Yeah.
stacked everything into that person and that reliability. And so they've become our all in all. And so
Mhm.
when that happens, when they disappoint us, our children, when that happens, when they disappoint us, you know, the people that are at our church, when that happens and they disappoint us, then we're like, we're all messed up, like, what happened? You know, and then we're freaked out because we don't understand why they haven't been controlled the way that we wanted them to be controlled. And so I think that we have to find a way to enjoy all of life together without a dependency upon people, because if we do that, then we allow people to be who they are. We find our own space to be who we are, and then we can have a better appreciation. What are you all's thoughts regarding that and what he says in this section?
I think you summed it.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
that's
so.
the thing about the girlfriends, because you give them everything 100%. And first time you let them down, that's when it goes, yeah, that's it. I think that's it.
Anyone else?
You know, what you said was so true. I had to learn after my kids got grown, I had to learn how to let them go. Um, I say a lot of times it took me about maybe about 5 to 7 years to learn how to let them be grown and that they really don't owe me their friendship. You know, I'm their mom and not their friend. I brought them up like that. And but when they were grown, I'm still thinking that we can still hang out. You know, they love me, but they may not necessarily want to hang out with me. So it was a growing, a hurting lesson, knowing that, okay, you guys are grown, but you don't call me. But I had to remember I did the same thing to my mom. So it's like I had to learn how to develop other interests. So what he said and what you said kind of summed it up, because I used to put everything in my boyfriends, then my kids, and then it was like, okay, they grown. Then I had to learn how to be able to be happy being by myself, which is great. You know, I've learned how to be happy within myself.
Okay, all right. The last section, well, the next to the last section of this chapter, he says validation is for parking, not people. He says looking for validation and love from an outside source of self will set you up for codependency issues. If you don't love you or like how you, excuse me, or like you, how can you expect someone else to love or like you? If your relationships are going to work, you've got to be good with you. Healthy, sustainable, whole relationships require two complete and whole people coming together in a union. It's not a 50-50 that makes 100, it's 100 and 100 that makes 100. And the belief to believe that people complete you, you know, I think from Jerry Maguire, if you ever saw that movie, you know, that's just the sweetest line is like, you complete me. Well, no, you don't complete me, because I think if there was a part two to Jerry Maguire, the movie, you would find that poor Jerry was not completed and she wasn't completed either in their marriage, because a person doesn't complete you. You
That's right.
have to be complete within yourself. That's
Amen.
why we depend upon the Holy Spirit as believers to help us. That's why we develop relationships with other people. That's why we have hobbies and interests in other things, so that we can come with a whole conglomerate of ideas, attitudes, and what have you, that we're not depending on just one person or one group of people to make us happy. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts upon this validation that we get from other people?
That's something I'm learning. I'm not there yet. I'm glad we're reading this book. It seemed like he peeked into my life.
I think we all have some issues sometimes with validation. We want to be validated. Vivian says here, you have to learn not to let other people's attitude and actions control yours. And
That's right.
so, yeah, that's very true. Validation comes oftentimes because we're looking for someone else to rubber stamp who we are. Michelle says here on Zoom, she said, it's true, the way that I feel when I was married, she said, it's a strength my husband appreciated, just being herself, having her own interests, having her own self. You know, you're not as so needy of a friendship. You're not so needy of a companion. You're not so needy of a group of people from the church, or you know, a group
Yeah.
of people from work, if
Yeah.
you really know that you have great validation within yourself. And then people can appreciate you more too, because they don't have to placate you. They don't have to,
Right.
you know, oh baby, it's okay. Now, don't get me wrong. Everybody needs to be celebrated. And I celebrate all of you all here today. You all are amazing women, powerful women. Those of you who are on Facebook, you are powerful people. We love you very much. Everybody needs to hear that from time to time. But if I need to hear it every single day, it gets exhausting. Can you imagine somebody saying every day to you, hey, tell me that I'm good, you know,
Right.
tell me that I'm okay. That from that movie, What About Bob, with Bill Murray, he's like, I need, give me, give me, give me, give me, you have to stop, it's too much. It's absolutely too much. It becomes too much for anybody to handle. So anybody else want to share about validation?
I don't know. I in my earlier years, I needed validation. I really don't. I guess the older we get, you don't need it as much. Everybody, like you say, need it from time to time, but it's not like one of my go-tos anymore. I don't need it as much. I'm kind of like settled into who I am. That's knowing who you are.
Mhm.
I know who I am and whose I am.
Yeah.
So I don't need it.
Yeah, I feel that way too. When I was younger, yeah, I needed that, but also I was going through a lot of problems. I didn't know, I was really young. But as you grow older, and I think as I grow closer to Christ, I have learned how not to rely on other people. I mean, I got friends that I talk to, but I don't need that validation. And I don't want people to be that needy towards me. That can get kind of
Right.
frustrating when somebody comes off to be too needy.
Well, and I don't want anybody to walk away from this moment thinking that, you have to be super spiritual to not want validation. And I don't
Right.
want anybody to walk away to think that you get to a certain age and you don't need validation. Everyone needs to have validation at one point or another. Sometimes we get validation through our jobs. Sometimes we get validation through our success. Sometimes we get validation through, someone telling us a good job. We need it at different points. However, what we have to worry about
Yeah.
is that if validation is our only go-to, I think that Veronica said it so well. If it becomes your only go-to, then it
Yeah.
becomes very dangerous, because
Problem.
that's all I'm looking for ever. However, I think we all need validation at one time or another, and that's really important, because
Yeah.
if you don't get it, it's you really do need it. There's a part of us that need it, but if we need it too much, as Prella has said, it gets exhausting. Like, oh, validate me. Oh, validate me.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
tell me that I'm great. Tell me that I look good. Tell me that I'm wonderful. You're wonderful. Mwah, 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 mwah. Oh, give me more, so.
Because sometimes I get caught up, I tell my coworkers at work, and sometimes I get caught up. We get so caught up in the busyness of moments, I forget the little things of thank you or whatever.
Yes.
Thank you, and I appreciate you guys. But then when I think about it, maybe that week, or usually I try to make it on Sundays. I like send them out a thank you card, a thank you note. I always try to come back, but it's like a week later or 10 days later. And I tell them how much I appreciate them. And I'll put a big old thank you note on Facebook. I always try to show them some type of validation, but I always tell them too, to make sure you encourage yourself in that moment, because nothing comes better than encourage yourself.
Right.
Because I can tell you all day long, but if you have no belief in yourself, then what I say is nothing. Because I don't want it to get so over validating that it's repetitious and it don't seem sincere.
Right.
Yes, you're right.
That's good. That's good. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Because I know I have a person, I know a person that does the same copy and paste, and I caught on to it. So that's not sincere to me. And I don't even think that they know I caught on to that. So that's not validation.
Yeah.
It's not. And I caught it, but they don't know I caught it. I caught it a long time ago. So they think they validate me, but they're really not.
Okay. All right. See, that's being honest with yourself. That's being real with yourself, and that's good. The last thing that he talks about here in this chapter is you can go graciously, talking about from failed relationships. So this could be in a marital, this could be in a relational, this could be in a friendship, whatever. He says, contrary to the magic of movies and television, every relationship isn't going to experience a happily ever after. Now, isn't that the truth? People come into your lives and people exit out of your lives to teach you how to graciously and honorably. So don't be afraid to let go. Every ending doesn't have to be explosive. Every ex doesn't have to be an enemy. Grace, empathy, forgiveness. Which are the areas did your last breakup grow you? You can tell a lot about a person by how they leave you.
Wow. Wow.
Well, yeah.
All I can say is wow.
So I think that what we're seeing, and if we're looking at even from a biblical lens from this book, is that how we represent ourselves in our relationships, even when they end. And if you've ever read this book, and we read it in our book club, maybe I think it was one of our first book club, maybe about 4 years ago that we read a book called The Tale of Three Kings. And in that book, it's the book about the three kings, Saul, David, and Absalom. And so there's a point in which Saul, of course, is attacking David. David leaves the kingdom so that he, is not disturbing the king. And then Absalom, David's son, tries to take over the kingdom, and David leaves so Absalom can take over. Because sometimes, even in the midst of when you have been appointed king, even when you know you're right, even when it was the right thing to do, how you leave the situation can be blessed. And so I think that that's what he's talking about here. The author, Pastor Stephen, is saying that you can leave graciously, and it can be done in a way where you can still walk away with your integrity. You can walk away even with joy. It may be a sad thing to leave, that girlfriend who's been hanging out with you for all these years, and you know that that season is over and you all have spent all these memories together, and it's hurtful and painful. It may be that your children now, they've changed how they interact with you, but it's a different season now, so they don't want you to hang out with them anymore. I remember a time my son used to want to hang out with me all the time. He's a grown guy now, so he want to hang out with me, and that's cool. That's understandable. Then I have to understand, just like in a relationship, if that relationship ends, how do I handle the relationship? How do I handle it? Do I handle it with this anxiety and with this hurt? And every time I see you, I'm just cussing underneath my breath,
Mhm.
or do I represent it with the graciousness and go, just like David did? Absalom was wrong to take over the kingdom. Saul was wrong to beat up on David, but in both situations, he leaves so that they can reign. And sometimes we just have to watch how we walk away.
Yes. Amen. Amen.
Yes, yes, yes.
Anyone else regarding this? You can go graciously in chapter 1.
I just want to say, and not getting into any details, my divorce, we had an ugly divorce, and we're not friendly at all. It's more like we're enemies. So I wish I had learned this earlier in life. But even as we're old, we're not. I mean, I can be, polite. Hello, how you are, and that's it. But yeah, this is something. Ooh, this is deep. That's why I say it's wow.
Well, I don't know if every relationship can be repaired from where it was, but I do know that a God who can repair us. And that's what we're dealing with, is we're dealing with the mirror moments, because it's not really about them. It's about us. It's about us looking at us and being able to walk away. So even though he may not speak to you, you can still have joy about him. Even though it didn't work out, you can still wish him well. You can wish him, all the best in his life, and keep it moving.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean that you all have to hang out. Y'all don't ever have to spend a holiday together. There's nothing that you don't ever have to see each other again, but you can still wish him well.
Okay.
All right.
Yes.
So anyone
Amen.
else before we finish up our Serenity Book Club for this week? We will work on our technical difficulties for next week. I'm going to stream this one as a premiere as soon as this recovers, and then this will be on YouTube as well. But I think that we've had a great discussion today. Thank you guys for joining us on Serenity Book Club. I always appreciate you guys coming on. I pray that you all will be very blessed and highly favored as you continue your walk in the Lord. And I hope that you have a most excellent day.
You too. God bless
Thank
you.
you.
God
ladies.
bless you.
Bye bye. Bye, ladies.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
See you next week.
Stephanie Vet,
Yes.
what time is your Zoom call?
Oh, the Zoom class is at 4:00.
Okay, because I got some questions. I keep freezing and I want to know if it's something I'm doing wrong or what.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. See ya.
See you now. Bye-bye.